everybody, and welcome to another episode of Seasons Ebb and Flow, the podcast and YouTube channel focused on divorce and how you can go through divorce as gracefully as possible and have a long-term future post-divorce that looks like a life that you want to live in. And today I'm going to be interviewing Anthony Diaz. He is a collaborative lawyer here in Orlando, Florida, and he works not just in the collaborative space, he's also a coach for other lawyers who are going through divorce. So that's an interesting aspect to how he contributes to the collaborative community. And Anthony, can you just tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. Well, thanks, Lee. I appreciate you having me. So, um, being an attorney is actually a second career of mine. I used to be a CPA. That was my first career. I did that for 10 or 12 years. And it uh, ultimately led me to going into law school in later in life and becoming an attorney. And it's been really helpful as a family law and collaborative attorney and mediator because many of the issues in those cases are financially related.
Yeah.
So having that background, although I don't keep up on all of the CPA and accounting goings on, it helps me with a lot of the option building and goals that couples have and help them to make decisions. Um,
Mm.
so I've been an attorney for almost 25 years. And I've been a mediator for over 10 years. I've been collaboratively trained for over 15 years.
Wow.
Um, and most of my practice is folks that are looking for a peaceful outcome for their divorce, whether it be through mediation, through the collaborative process, or through an uncontested divorce. I'm known as the peacemaker, and that brings a lot of comfort to people that are not looking for the courts to make a decision for them, but are looking for someone to help them have a peaceful and amicable outcome.
Yeah, I love that. That's as a coach for my clients, I am constantly redirecting them to the focus of your kids as your priority for the long-term health of your family to keep in mind, are these things that are driving you crazy about the divorce worth kind of dragging yourselves through court or taking it down a path that you don't want it to go to. So, yeah, I love the idea of trying to keep the peace as much as possible for divorce. And I think that's one of the things I love about lawyers who gravitate towards the collaborative process is that they want their clients to get through the divorce process as unscathed as possible and and recognize the long-term benefits for the whole family. What when you talk about some of the benefits when you're talking to clients who are trying to decide, should I try the collaborative process? What are some of the things that you help them realize that are benefits that they might see if they actually take the collaborative divorce approach?
Yeah, there are certainly a lot of benefits of the collaborative process, and there really isn't any drawbacks of the process other than if it doesn't um, resolve itself, that in many cases the spouses would have to start all over again with other attorneys. But the ways in which the collaborative process really supports children that are involved in the divorce. Now they're basically bystanders. They didn't ask for
Hmm.
the divorce. Um, they're involved in it indirectly. They're really not in the
Right.
case, but decisions are being made for them. So it's very difficult for them just on a general level. So using a process that's um, uh, not involved in court, is less adversarial, which means the parents have more opportunities to get along and not be stressed out by the court process. Children see that. So
Yeah.
they feel safer in the collaborative process because they see their parents handling it better than it would be if it's in court, and they're not afraid of what's going to happen to them. So their safety is really um, enhanced by the collaborative process. They also get to see their parents um, in conflict resolution and
Yes.
doing it in a an amicable way, or if not amicable, at least um, less adversarial than if it went to court. And now
Yeah.
the children, as they grow up and they're learning how to behave and show up in relationships, and if conflicts come up, now they have this behavior modeled for them by their
Yeah.
parents that they will, of course, remember and hopefully use in their relationships if there is conflict, or if their relationships come to an ending point.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Absolutely. I think that many people think, oh, I can't do collaborative because I don't get along with my ex. But what I remind people is that you can not like your ex, but work respectfully with each other in order to get to the conclusion. And ex you are role modeling that you can be in a difficult situation, but still be respectful and try to stay in your best self. And then that's what your kids are seeing. And if you want them in their future to, when they're in tough situations, and it doesn't only have to be with in a relationship, you might have a difficult boss, or, there are so many situations where we have to learn that you can not be happy with the process or what's happening, but you can show up in a respectful, calm, grounded way to find the best resolution.
Absolutely. And the parents are going to be co-parenting until at least their children are 18, but they're going to
Yeah.
be involved in their children's life forever, for the rest of their life.
Yes.
And how they resolve the divorce is going to impact how they get along and show up for their children when their children get older and they
Yeah.
get married, and there's going to be weddings
Yes.
and grandchildren, and both parents are going to be involved in that process. So if you choose a a process that's um, more peaceful and amicable and civil for the end of the marriage,
Hmm.
the way that the spouses work together in that process is going to have um, positive consequences in the future as the parents move on and their children are getting older, and being able to participate in these um, once in a lifetime events in their children's lives, and be able to do that and get along. I mean, like I said, they don't have to like each other, and
Yes.
they may in a way hate each other, but working together in a difficult process will help them to put those feelings aside when those big events could come up in their children's lives,
Yeah.
and they can show up as a united front.
Yeah. And then the kids don't have to be stressed that their parents can't behave and can't be in the same room. Like the kids shouldn't have to carry the stress that their parents don't have the ability to be in the same room together. So
Mm-hmm.
it's the parents' responsibility to take on the roles of the mature adults so that the kids don't have to parentify themselves and try and help the parents act like adults.
Right. And that all starts with the collaborative process. When the children see that the parents are getting along, that also gives them a feeling of not having to take sides, which
Yes.
happens a lot of times in contentious divorces. And when that happens and the divorce is over and the children get older, the taking sides is still there. It
Yeah.
never got resolved. And that many times it gets in the way of, like, if they're having a wedding and one parent won't show up, or one parent or one child doesn't want the other parent there.
Right.
And that really stemmed from the divorce and how that was resolved. So kind of all of these are like unintended consequences
Yes.
that you don't really think about when you're looking at the collaborative process. But if you take a step back and you look at the future and you look at your
Hmm.
children, and what could happen or what good can come out of it, if you take the time, there is really a lot of good that
Yes.
can come out of the future from choosing the collaborative process in the present.
I totally agree. I remind my clients that to think of it like a snowball. And, if you make a few bad decisions at the beginning of the divorce, like choosing a really aggressive attorney that has no problem with the concept of going to court, and it can just snowball into something that you had never anticipated. And walking that back once that snowball has started down the hill is so difficult. So, the choices you make up front, like the divorce approach, the attorney you hire, and of course, you don't have control over who your spouse hires, but if you can try and come to an agreement that you are going to try and complete the divorce outside of court and choose a divorce approach that's in the best interests of your kids, you're preventing that snowball from getting out of control.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So before we got on here, we talked a little bit about the fact that you work with other attorneys who are going through divorces and you coach them because many attorneys have started to realize that they can be good attorneys, but maybe not showing up in their own divorce in their best self. And so they have hired you to help them. Can you tell us a little bit about how you help them and, why someone who's a lawyer might actually need a coach?
sure. So working with attorneys was not something that I initially envisioned having that part of my practice. Um, and it stemmed from my own divorce some years ago when I was an attorney, and my reaction to it was a little arrogant, a little kind of nonchalant. I just went and hired a family law attorney and basically told him just go and get it done.
Mm,
I didn't really realize the emotional aspect of divorce. I wasn't practicing in family law at that time, and
okay.
it wound up being a contentious divorce. It settled in mediation. Um, we had to be in separate rooms, which happens in mediations. And when I look back on that experience, I realized that my role in my own divorce was still acting like an attorney,
Yeah.
and that's what I knew. And when I was in an adversarial situation, what do attorneys do? They just dig in and they try to get the best deal at all costs.
Yeah.
And looking back on that, one, it allowed me to see that that's not really the way to get a good outcome, and that's not the only way to resolve a divorce. But looking at myself as an attorney, that I wasn't able to let go of that attorney mindset
Yeah.
in this process, and I stayed in that mindset. And when I was asked to help another attorney, you know, who was going through a divorce, what they were looking for is some help to navigate through this process that they were having difficulty with. And part of the difficulty is the attachment to the outcome and the attachment of how they would show up in that process.
Mm-hmm.
And in working together and with a number of clients, what they realized is having that attorney mindset is actually a detriment to them in the process. They already have an attorney helping them. Let
Yes.
let their attorney do their job, one,
Yes.
and two, it's okay to allow yourself to feel the emotions, and you don't have to have this front that you show for your clients, because you're impartial, you're neutral, you can go in guns a blazing because you know when to hold them and when to fold them,
Yeah.
as Kenny Rogers would say. And in your own divorce, you're attached to that and you're not neutral, and it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to separate yourself. And if you're left to your own devices, that's how you're going to react. But
Yes.
having someone like myself that is an attorney, does know the attorney mindset, has been with, they've been, I'm able to help them look at it a little bit differently. And one of the things I talk with them is, what would you say to your clients, especially if these are family law attorneys, who are coming to you for advice? What would you say to them in terms of them reacting and how they show up? That's really what
Yes.
you have to ask yourself. And a lot of them are not able to do that. So I'm able to do that for them. And it's really helpful for them because they didn't realize that they were the holdup in the
Yes.
divorce, and they were the obstacle to resolution because they're looking at it as an attorney as opposed to what's really in my best interest, and how do I manage my emotions that I'm not used to managing in a legal situation. Uh,
Yes. Yeah, it's interesting. Like basically, you're acting completely as a divorce coach for other lawyers who are going through their own divorce. Like when I work with clients as a divorce coach, when they first come to me, I do something called a best self exercise, and we talk through what do you look like in your best self and what things pull you out of your best self and what does that look like when that reptilian brain takes over with the emotions. Do you catastrophize or go on the offense? And once you've started to identify that and bring it into your perceptual set and consciousness, you can start to catch yourself as you're falling into that place that doesn't end up serving you because it drags you into an emotional response instead of the response where your frontal cortex,
mhm.
sorry, is actually like online. And I think that essentially what you're doing is you're helping them take off the lawyer hat and take on the who am I in my best self hat. And and
Yeah.
it's weird how we sometimes just need an outsider to help us see that.
And it's an awareness, like you talk about, that they're not they may not be used to having. Now, there are a number of evolved attorneys out there that have developed that consciousness and that awareness, and there are a number of attorneys that have spent so much time in the law, and maybe they were attracted to the law because of that particular mindset, that maybe didn't develop an awareness of their own um, uh, barometer and aware of their own self and monitoring themselves, that now they're in a situation where they have to and they don't know how.
Yes, yes, exactly. Oh, that's wonderful. I'm glad that you're out there doing that and helping them. Uh, to come back a little bit to the collaborative process, can you explain how the lawyers in the collaborative process work with the financial neutral and the mental health neutral in the process?
Sure. So for me, over the many cases I've had, I've developed a process working with the neutrals in this case.
Okay.
So most collaborative cases have two attorneys, each represent one of the spouses, And in many cases, there are two neutrals that are brought in. One, a mental health neutral that helps facilitate the process with their skills of conflict resolution and making sure that the process, doesn't get derailed with any conflict that comes up. And of course, if there are children, there are excellent resources for the parenting plan.
Yeah.
We also have a financial neutral that is their sole involvement is the equitable distribution and any financial calculations that have to be made. So when for me, when a collaborative case starts, I get together with the other collaborative attorney, and my preference is to look at the case and to see which professionals would best support this case. Now,
Yeah.
that's not the mindset of a lot of collaborative attorneys. A lot of collaborative attorneys like to work in teams and like to work in the same teams every
Mm,
time. And there is a benefit to knowing each other and working together and being able to support their clients that way. And I'm not against that. Uh, I like to look at that each case is different and offers its own unique issues and
mm,
own unique challenges that that may require one neutral or two neutrals over other neutrals.
right.
So having that discussion with the other attorney, like, what are the main issues? What are we looking at here? What could be issues that could derail this case, and what neutrals can we have on this team that will best support these folks in coming to um, a successful resolution.
Yeah.
And it's different for every case. The issues are different, and being able to have the team that's the right team for this couple is really important. So what I do is get to know every mental health neutral and every financial neutral that's in the collaborative community. I'm in collaborative groups throughout the state of Florida, and there are different people that operate in different geographical
Mm,
areas. But I want to make sure that if I get a case in any of those areas, that I'm familiar enough with the neutrals
mm,
that I can help with what's the best fit for them,
yeah.
and getting to know them and who they are helps me when a case comes up, and I can say, oh, well, this person would be perfect because they bring these skills to the tables, or that person. So getting to know
Yeah.
all of the neutrals for me as a collaborative attorney is really important in um, knowing what's the best team to put together for this case.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, like for example, I have a client and the husband has his own business and it's causing so getting the business evaluated to determine the worth of the business in order to split it has been this huge ordeal. Like his side has their own business evaluator, her side, they're not doing collaborative, but
Mm.
her side has a business evaluator. Now his side said they want a third business evaluator, and each of these business evaluators costs so much money, and it takes months. And because each of their sides said the business is worth, the difference was like in the millions. And um, so let's just say hypothetically, this couple was doing collaborative. You would then have a neutral who is someone who does business valuations and works with the financial neutral and tries to move that along without it becoming this total disaster.
Sure, and there are many financial neutrals that also have business valuation experience,
Okay.
and so then we don't even need two
Yes.
neutrals. We can have that all in one neutral to take care of the business evaluation and everything else, having to do financially with this couple. But if that's not uh, possible, agreeing on one business evaluator,
Yeah.
and they would have access to all of the same information, and both spouses will have access to this person. And it's not
Yes,
like each of them has their own, and then it's a battle, of
totally.
the experts. And they will trust this person more because this person is neutral. They're not taking sides. They're
Yes.
just going to help them generate options and
Yeah.
information that will help them to make a decision. Whereas there's when you're in the court world, and each expert is usually looked at with skepticism from the other side, because
Yeah.
they're saying, well, you want to have a number that favors your client, and the other expert's going to have a number that's going to favor their client. So you you put aside the dueling expert process, and you pick one neutral. It's less money, it's less adversarial. The spouses will trust them because they're neutral and not taking sides.
Yeah.
And you're going to have probably a more realistic evaluation for the business. You're not going to have these two extremes that are only extreme because they're trying to benefit one client or the other. So,
Exactly.
that's where the collaborative process, when you bring in neutrals that normally would each have their own expert in a litigation case, you're putting all that energy and time into an expert that doesn't have a dog in the fight, and
Hmm.
their opinion and the information that they gather and present to the clients are going to be met with less skepticism and
Yes.
more independence.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so unfortunate, this case. They aren't sharing information easily. Getting the information to do the business evaluation has been a nightmare, and it is becoming a battle between the experts, and it's it's yeah, it's just really unfortunate when you see a case take on a life like that, and chances are it is going to end up being a judge who decides a lot for that family, and it's hard to watch, and
Yeah, again, another another reason to use an out of court process like the collaborative process, because they'll also be less likely to have future litigation on this issue. Now, this issue
mm,
that goes to court, whatever the outcome is, it's going to be appealed. You're going to spend more money. You're going to have
mm,
more experts brought in. It never really ends when
wow.
it goes to court. And now you can have a nice, neat outcome that people don't get stressed about, with a value that they trust, because it's coming to that conclusion from an independent
Yeah.
expert.
Yeah. And I do think the other thing that people forget with collaborative is that it's all private if it's collaborative. Like with this case, now all that information that comes out about the business in the court is now public information. So it's kind of like seems to me like it should be a no-brainer. But I just don't think there's enough education out there about the collaborative process yet.
Yeah, and I think any case could be collaborative, but it requires both of the spouses to really buy into it
Yeah.
and understand the benefits, like the confidentiality
Yes.
and the amount of money they're going to spend on future litigation. I think that needs to be explained to them, and I think it's important to have it explained to them even by litigation attorneys.
Yeah.
Because let the clients make the decision. Give them all the information. This is why collaborative is good. This is maybe why it's not good. And give them all the information that the client needs to make a decision. And if they decide to go collaborative, then the litigation attorney should now focus on other cases that you know maybe aren't going to be collaborative. But I think you hit the nail on the head by educating people on the front end.
Hmm.
They have all the information they need, and if they decide at the end of the day they just want a judge to make the decision, at least they had all the information they need and know the ramifications of a judge making the decision. And if they want their day in court, at least it's not because they didn't know of all the benefits of collaborative.
Yeah, yeah, I know. And again, that snowball concept, like now that this situation is so far down the line, like there's no way they could reel it back and be like, okay, we're going to start over with the collaborative. Whereas if they'd started with collaborative, at least they'd given it a chance. If it didn't work,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't work. But, it seems like it should be the first go-to for
Mm-hmm.
everybody.
I agree.
Or just start out with a mediator. Just go to a mediator and see how far you can get just with a mediator and consulting attorneys potentially. Like these, just don't assume you have to go to litigation attorneys as as the default.
Mm-hmm.
I want people to just slow down and make the decision very consciously up front because those upfront decisions really have so much impact on that snowball down the road. So, all right, well, we have reached 4 o'clock. So I want to say thank you so much for this interview. I really appreciate your time and information, and maybe we will do another one in the future, but I appreciate your sharing everything that you know today.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate you allowing me uh, to educate people on the collaborative process because I think that's where the collaborative process really starts. It doesn't start at the process; it starts at the education side, and I appreciate you being out front with that and helping the people get all the education they need.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, take care.
All right.